Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you are joining us. I'm excited to introduce our very special guest and a dear friend of mine, Dr. Elena Villanueva. She's an international speaker, health influencer, and co-author of the Longevity Code. Dr. Elena teaches evidence-based approaches for finding and treating the underlying causes of chronic illness, mental health conditions, and neurodegenerative disease. I'm so happy you're here with us today.
I'm so excited to be here with you, Robyn. We've got so much amazing information that I'm so excited to share.
Yeah, well, I really admire this work, this mission, vision that you're on. And wow, you've helped thousands of people around the globe to get to the root cause. And I know your focus is on trauma. So let's go right into the heart of the matter.
Yeah, well, my work, just as many people, my work stemmed out of, some of my own experiences with really, really severe chronic illness, both in my body and in my brain. And what I discovered, I was super fortunate because just like many people, they'll get really sick. They'll end up going to their doctors and they get no answers. They get no solutions. Sometimes they even just get sent home with, Xanax or an antidepressant or just, things to kind of tape over their symptoms. And meanwhile, the underlying root causes are just festering. And, I was super fortunate because I have a background in medicine and I just so happen to have the right interactions or the right downloads from the divine, or from God. Just, I was taken on a path to find the answer so that I could get my health back when nobody else had answers for me. And what I discovered, Robyn, is that there's never one root cause. So there's a couple of things that I discovered. Number one, there's never one root cause. Our bodies are so resilient. They can typically handle one thing, maybe even two things that could be, otherwise, toxic to the body, because the body is very resilient. So I discovered that there's usually a handful of root causes, and we can always talk about that in the discussion today. But the other thing that I discovered that made one of the biggest shifts in me being able to regain my brain function back, because I couldn't talk. I didn't even know my son's name. I was very, very sick. I went into full-blown dementia in my 30s, was discovering this one root cause that a lot of people are not aware of. And that is the root cause of this distortion that can happen in your bioenergetic field. And very, very commonly, these distortions can happen from unresolved trauma, which, whether people realize it or not, 100% of people, if you're having a human experience, if you're on this planet, everybody, 100% of people go through it. And we're not taught how to have resolution of that. So it gets stored in the body. And then you've got these unprocessed emotions that go with it. And then you develop these thought patterns and these belief systems that go with it. So you end up having these things that literally, these energetic things, these things that are not tangible, they get stored inside of our cells, tissues, and organs, creating a distortion in that bioenergetic field that leads to disease and prevents people from getting better. And this is the one thing, people can do all the things. They can discover all these root causes of toxins and foods, chemicals, heavy metals, medications that are making them sick. They can discover all these things and they can get those things out of the body because those are all barriers to healing. But if they don't address these barriers to healing that you and I are going to dive into today, this is where people typically don't find full healing. And so, that's the work that I do, is just teaching people how to discover all of their root causes. And then we like to dial in on the trauma and the emotions and the thoughts and the belief systems that a lot of people, that a lot of practitioners out there are just not aware of, as that being one of the biggest root causes of underlying chronic disease.
Well, let's start talking about some of these root causes. I mean, a lot of people have experienced abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, um, events that have happened, death. Uh, a lot of difficult things happen in our earlier lives and throughout our lives. But can you just talk about those more and really share more how they're affecting us on a cellular level?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the best way to start is to kind of like give a definition of what trauma is and what it isn't. A lot of us think of trauma as like a massive event, right? Like physical abuse, verbal abuse, you get hit by a truck, right? You can have, you get, somebody, physically hurts you, or sexual abuse or whatever. But trauma can also be from things that people wouldn't necessarily think of, like a friend not showing up for you, or a kid, calling you fat when you're on your way to school, you're in third grade and you're getting ready for picture day, and some kid walks by you and calls you fat or ugly or something like that. These things can create great trauma in the body and totally repattern the entire neurological system. And why that is so is because it's not the event itself. So the old definitions of trauma were that it was the event. The new definitions of trauma, now that we have more science to understand this, is that it's not necessarily the event itself, Robyn. It's the story that we create around the event. It's the perception that we have of what happened to us. And as we create those stories, some really intense emotions develop with the story that we're creating around that event. And oftentimes, it's not even necessarily true, but we think it's true because of the story that we create. And then those resulting emotions that we have, then it changes the way that we think about ourselves and the world around us based off of that. And these things change our energetic frequency in our cells, tissues, and organs. And some of these different emotions and thoughts, they can literally kind of like they can get attracted to certain organ systems, like the liver. Typically can be associated with unresolved anger, right? Different parts of the body, they'll get stuck in there, and they change the resonance, they change the frequency of the body, they create an energetic distortion, and those cells, tissues, and organs cannot work properly. And so they become more susceptible to disease and illness.
Exactly. In the lungs, right? That's where we hold grief and kidneys, fear. So, working with patients for 30 years, I just see it again and again, and broken hearts, right? You see all kinds of anxiety and depression and sadness that gets stored in the body. So, how do we lift that from our bioenergetic field, but which is we're not separate from that, right? So the physical and the energetic system, it's all connected.
That's such a great question. This is the secret that we want to get out to the world, to teach people that there are solutions there, and that they do work. So first of all, we want to be able to change the narrative. We want to change the story. If we can learn, once we learn this simple concept, it, it's so powerful. It empowers us to actually change our life. And I remember when I learned this, I had so many bad things that I experienced, so many harsh realities and experiences that I had up into my late 30s. And I always thought that it was happening to me. Why is this happening to me? And I would pray all the time, oh God, like the power was up there. Oh, please help me. What am I doing? Am I not doing enough? I need to suffer more. I was raised Catholic, so it was like, oh, I'm not doing enough. I need to sacrifice harder, until it almost killed me. Um, the day that I realized that I was the one driving the car, Robyn, the day that I realized that I was the one that had created a lot of my own suffering, um, there was a big shift. because I realized, oh my gosh, if I have created my reality up until now, not, unconsciously, not realizing that I was just precipitating more of what I didn't want unconsciously, how then can I turn around and change my reality so that I can have the life that I do want? And that's where my journey started. And this is where it has to start for a lot of people, Robyn. It's just becoming aware that you're driving the car. You can change it. Once we become aware and we have this awareness, then the next question is, well, what can I do so that I can change my thoughts? What can I do so that I can resolve these traumas and not have these dense emotions of fear and anger and shame and all these things anymore? How do I get this stuff out of my body? And the good news is that there are so many different tools and modalities that work to help shift that narrative and literally pull this stuff out of your body like you're pulling thorns out. There are a lot of tools and modalities, from resonance repatterning to hypnotherapy to quantum time therapy. There's a lot of different tools and modalities that can be used to start making these shifts so that you can pull these thorns out of the body. And as you start having resolution and getting the wisdom from these events, right? Instead of still being in the narrative that it happened to you, that now it happened for you. And now you can literally go back in your timeline in the quantum field, and you can change the story and change the narrative, get the learnings, empower yourself. And as soon as that happens, a shift happens and these emotions will come out, and they come out fast. It can be scary for people who have suffered for years, because when you allow yourself to feel it, it just precipitates more of those ugly feelings. And so it makes people numb, and they want to become numb because they want to hold it in because they don't want to feel it. But once you have the right tools and the right coaches, the right mentors to show you and take you through the process, you realize that it really doesn't hurt so bad to pull the thorn out when you have a process that you can follow to do that. And once you do that, your thoughts start to change. Those negative, dense emotions, I don't really like to call them negative. They do serve a purpose, but those dense emotions change. And as your thoughts start to change and your beliefs change, and you start to be able to feel gratitude and happiness and safety again in your body, your reality starts to follow. The reality change starts to happen.
Wow. I'm thinking back. There was a psychic surgeon from the Philippines who came to my center several times, very Catholic, and we'd pray before he would do all these. I mean, literally, he would just take his hands, Elena, and go in and take out tumors and shoulders, in the gut, in the prostate, and years and years of working with patients to just see what exactly you're talking about, how the trauma, these thought patterns, these stories get woven deeply in and get trapped as stagnant tissue. It looks like fungus, literally. Like, what is cancer? What is a lot of these masses that show up in our body? And in his whole approach with working with people, he would take it out, he would show them. I mean, it was just amazing. I assisted him. I saw this for hours and upon hours, to say, even when you take something out like that, are you still feeding it? Are we still feeding those stories, right? When do we just say, I'm ready to transmute, to give it back to Mother Earth and to be set free? It's possible. And that I love where you're going with this discussion, this conversation, and for everyone listening to open up your heart and your mind and to allow the shift that's going to happen for you, even in this time together. That's how energy works.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's just, it does take, it does take some attention, and it takes the self-love, and it takes a little discipline and some time to make those shifts. But you're absolutely right. Like, there are people, there are healers just like your friend who really are doing things like this, which is just like, it's miraculous. It's beautiful. And then we even have bioenergetic devices now that can be used to scan the body for these distortions in the bioenergetic field. And then we even have, like things like infoceuticals, things that are, things that are imprinted with the correcting energetic frequency that you can put into your body to help restore the proper frequency. However, as you and I are talking about, we have to stop putting it in. And what's really fascinating is that there is science that shows how the nervous system and the brain rewires itself as you've created these stories through your lifetime. And this is why it becomes so deeply imprinted in our body, because we've literally rewired our brains and our bodies to stay inside of that story. So you stay in this hamster wheel, this perpetual hamster wheel, and until you have, number one, the awareness, and then number two, you start learning and implementing the tools, you can literally rewire your brain and your body back to a state of health, so that you don't keep feeding it all of that sickness.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for neuroplasticity and all that we've learned about the brain's capacity to heal and create new, beautiful pathways. And we want to keep feeding that with our daily practices, like you're saying, with our thoughts, with our choices, getting that oxytocin, being with our animals and our loved ones. All of that really helps to keep this cycle of health and wellness going in the right, beautiful direction of enjoying this earth walk.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Neuroplasticity is something that a lot of people are hearing about. Maybe we could touch on this for just a minute. People are hearing this word, neuroplasticity, neuroplasticity. Like, what does that mean? What that means for those of you listening is neuroplasticity is the body's ability to literally, like those old operators back in the day, and they were like moving all the wires around. We can do that. We actually can control and rewire our entire nervous system. And so in my trauma masterclass, I show pictures. I show what happens in the brain when we create these negative stories around these events that happen to us in our life. And very, very simply put, I show how you get the input from your outer environment, you create the story around it, and then some of the impulses, some of the messages go to your frontal lobe, which helps you with reasoning. It helps you to decipher if there's really a threat or not, and what kind of a decisions or action that you should take to correct the problem. It helps you to be able to be rational. And then you've got another part of your brain that is the fight or flight center. It's the amygdala. It's kind of buried deeper inside the brain. And it's not as big as this part of the brain. The frontal lobe is pretty big. It's very, very well developed. The amygdala is tiny. It's like a little peanut. And when you start creating these negative stories that then create these emotions that put you into a state of fight or flight, when this happens repeatedly over and over, you start getting more messages. The brain starts to rewire itself, and you get more messages to the fight or flight center, the amygdala, and you start getting fewer messages to the rational center of your brain. So now every time that you see something that's triggering you all the time, keeping you in fight or flight, the amygdala actually starts to grow like a muscle. It gets bigger and bigger, and the frontal lobe atrophies, gets smaller and smaller. And then you end up in a state where you can't think rationally anymore. And you can't decipher what's true or what's not, what's a real threat or what's not. And when you end up with this change in your brain where the frontal lobe, the rational part of your brain, shrinks and the amygdala gets bigger and all these messages are going back and forth, now your whole body starts to rewire and you go into this fight or flight stage, and it changes all your chemistry, and all these emotions that are quote unquote negative or dense, they start to perpetuate, and the hamster wheel gets bigger and bigger, and you get stuck in there, and it changes all your body chemistry, and it causes all this toxic buildup in your body that makes you sick. But the good news, like you said, is that because of neuroplasticity and because there are tools that we can learn to master our mind and master how our body responds, we can go back to that healthy state. We can rewire our brain and body once again to get it into a state so that it's there to help heal us and keep us healthy.
And everyone has this capacity, right? So
Everybody does. Yes.
everybody does. Yeah. And it's amazing to see that as that neuroplasticity happens, and that we go from like the beta, like really looking at brain waves, right? Where people are trapped, like you said, in the amygdala and the beta pathways, right? They can't even get into theta. Theta is healing, feeling like you feeling that connection to the universal flow, to source energy, into gamma, into the heart of the universe, right? That's where that shift happens. So what are some of your top tools that you share with your clientele?
We actually have a beautiful program that we'll take our clients through. It's a 6-month mind body energy program where we take them through a series of different tools and modalities to lift and release and free themselves from these trapped emotions and traumas and these and this dysregulation of their bioenergetic field so that they can heal. And where we like to start people in their very, very first month is teaching them a couple of basic tools that work 1,000% of the time if you do them. And these tools are first designed to take their body out of fight or flight. We've got to activate the parasympathetic nervous system to get them out of fight or flight before we start pulling the thorns out. Before we do that, we need to bring them into a calm state. And a couple of the tools that we use for that, Robyn, are EFT tapping, which works very, very well to calm the body. It's not fixing a root cause of anything, but it works extremely well at helping to activate the parasympathetics and get the body into a more relaxed state. And then the other tool that our clients start with in month 1, in addition to the EFT tapping, is breath therapy. We have a breath therapist on our team who takes them through learning how to start connecting their body to their breath to activate the vagus nerve so that we can take them out of fight or flight. So we use these 2 tools in month 1, and we track their stress markers using a Garmin device so it's a wearable, and they are tracking their stress metrics. We also do before and after adrenal stress profiles. And we make sure that they're utilizing those tools the way they're supposed to in their first 4 to 6 weeks so that they can track and see how these tools are working to bring them out of a state of fight or flight, because they need to master those tools first. Then when we get into their second month, then we start taking them through different tools and modalities, including breath work, a combination of hypnosis with breath, so hypno breath, we do that. And then we use modalities like resonance repatterning that includes light, color, sound therapy, and somatic work. And then we also will take them through some deep education on the use of language, because these people are using language that's precipitating their issues. They don't even realize it. We teach them the power of language and how words carry frequency. So we're teaching them how to change their language. We also take them through quantum time therapy, perceptual positions, and a bunch of other different tools and modalities to help quickly release these emotions. So there are like 6 big emotions. We call them the big 6. It was like, fear and guilt and shame and anger and rage, these different ones, so that we can release that. And so we take them through all these tools. And even spending one full day where one of our coaches will spend a full day doing what we call an emotional and trauma release breakthrough, about 6 hours, where we take them through this process to quickly remove this stuff out. And then we spend 4 months doing integration with them, Robyn, to integrate and help them build the new neurological pathways, so that by the time that we're finished with them in 6 months, we have not only taken them through the process, but we've taught them the tools so that they can continue using those tools for the rest of their life.
That's a beautiful, beautiful process. And in that time, that the body, right? Like, so people are suffering from an autoimmune condition or some type of depression cycle, that they're able to get free of that. In the body, the chemistry, your digestive system, things start working as you release and transmute that which is no longer serving you. And you bring awareness and you, appreciation too, right? A lot of the stuff that we get to say goodbye to, we get to say thank you for all the lessons, like you said, with your own personal journey, Dr. Elena, that this happened for you, for your growth. And now look what you're doing. You're able to teach your transformation, what you did, and to help others.
Absolutely. I mean, I have so much appreciation now for what I've done and what I'm able to do to help other people. And, the other thing that I would love to say is that, for everybody listening, you're getting an opportunity to hear from top experts around the world. And, just don't forget that we're all human. So we're all working on stuff too. We're always in a state of learning and gaining wisdom and mastering our minds. Even myself, Robyn, you and I, we're friends. We've had some really great discussions. As we continue healing and expanding and stepping into our power, then the universe, God, will reveal another layer that, oh, here's this other layer. This when you were 3, or from something you experienced that you don't even consciously remember. It's there. Are you ready to work on this one? And the cool thing is that once we realize these things, and we have the tools to know how we can pull that one out too, then we can continue learning and we can continue growing. And, I truly believe that we're all here to help each other. And so, we're just a little further down in the process than maybe some people that might be listening. But we're no different. We're all going through the human experience too. And, how good that we can learn to master all of our tools, to learn to master our minds, determines, how well, or it really determines the outcomes of our reality.
Oh, thank you, Elena. I'm so grateful for our connection, and it's so beautiful. And I think all of us, to reach out to our friends and family members. I mean, sometimes we are can be as sick as our deepest, darkest secrets. I mean, in 30 years, I've heard everything you can imagine on my tables, and for people to be vulnerable and to be able to share, and to be embarrassed and afraid to reveal. But when we start talking about those things, I mean, sometimes we don't we wake up, through on my tables. I'm sure you've experienced this too. People have memories of very traumatic events in their bodies. My point being is that it's, we are all doing the best we can, and we all have stuff, painful things that have happened to us, and we do need to talk about it. And we can say yes, we value our lives while we're here to heal this. So anyway, yeah, I love it. We're so transparent with each other, right? It's like all that stuff goes away so we can just meet heart to heart. And that's a beautiful way to be intimate with friends, with your spouse, with your loved ones, that we can really just share our truth of who we are.
And it's so healing too, because we become reflections for each other. We become reflections for each other so that we can maybe more easily see the beautiful things about us, and also, even in the imperfections, learn how we can move through that by being reflections for each other. And that's something beautiful that, I have very high hopes that, that the types of relationships that I have been able to attract into my life, I have very, very high hopes for the rest of the world, that more and more people will be able to experience those types of connections and relationships and beautiful, gentle, loving reflections in their healing process, so that I really do believe that the world can heal. I really, really do believe that. And it starts with us. It starts with us showing people the possibilities of what it can be like. If they can see the possibilities and hear it in story, and hear our visions, and watch the transformation of other people and hear their stories of how it's happened, it gives them hope. It gives them an idea of a possibility. And if they can just grab onto that spark of that possibility and they can start to create a new narrative and a new story for themselves based off of a story that they heard from someone else and it really resonated with them, that's where the healing can really, really start.
Amen. So, what are some like as you are working with people that are just so trapped in their thoughts? I think that's where, as we release the old and we bring in the new, we get caught back in that roommate in our head. Like, is there? You mentioned EFT. Could you maybe if you'd like to, Elena, would you like to share one of these techniques with all of us right now?
Sure. Quantum time therapy. This is a really, really beautiful modality and tool that can be used as often as you want. So, you might learn it the first time through like one of our coaches or through somebody who you hire who understands this modality, but then you can learn to do it on your own. It's not hard. And so the first thing where you start is you close your eyes and you visualize where is your future and where is your past. That's very important because everybody's going to visualize it different. Some people will visualize their future right in front of them and their past right behind them. Some people will visualize it. For me, I always visualize my future is there and my past is over there. So mine is like at an angle, like this way. And so what you do, the whole purpose of this is to go back in your timeline to the event. I'm going to teach you how to do this in just a second, but you go back in time to the event, floating over the event and looking down at it. If you're able to drop down into the event without it triggering you, without the fear coming back or those dense emotions, then you can drop down into the event. And you might notice that once you drop down that you're looking at the event as if you're watching yourself and the other person. You may also notice that you drop back down inside of your old self and you're looking through your own eyes. If the event is too emotional for you, then you can come back up and hover over it. And you can even make the event as far away as like from here to the moon or from here to Saturn. Because when you do that in your brain, it calms the body down. Oh, it's very, very far away. There's no danger. And so what you do is you drop back down into the event and you learn to ask your unconscious mind. So you're connecting with your heart and you ask your unconscious mind, what are you learning from this? What is the lesson here? What's the learnings? And you get the learnings and you write the learnings down, or if you have a coach working with you, they're writing the learnings down. And then for what higher purpose? What's the higher purpose of that? What's the higher purpose of that? And so you start going through that. And as you start talking to yourself and you're taking yourself through this, you start creating a new story, don't you? Because it's not happening to you anymore. You're not the victim. You're getting the learnings. And for what higher purpose are you getting those learnings? What's the higher purpose in that? What higher purpose is it serving? So you can literally go back in time and you can change the story. Once you change the story and you come back into the present moment, everything else from that event all the way up to right now, everything has changed in the quantum field. And so now you're no longer carrying those memories of the events as a traumatic thing that happened to you. Now you're empowered. You no longer have those emotions that you're carrying with you anymore. And this is the thing, Robyn. We live in a 3D world. In a 3D world, you can't go back in time. But we all know, and the science is out there to prove this. This is just one dimension. And our brains have been designed over many, many years, our brains have been designed to only be able to tune in to this one dimension. It's like 0.001. Like we're only tuning in to the things to matter, to the things that we can see here in the third dimension. But there are other dimensions and we can tap into those. So if we can learn to do that, it is actually possible. You can go back in time and you can change the narrative. And so if you actually want to do the exercise, you figure out where your future is and where your past is. So mine is like this. Close the eyes, see the timeline as a line, see where you are right now, go up above, hover and look down. So I'm hovering above and I'm looking down and I see myself sitting here in this chair, having this interview with you with I can really see the silver because I'm up above. So I can see all my little silver hair that I'm letting grow in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around and I'm going to look at my past. Where do I want to go today that I'm going to go work on? Oh, I'm going to go back to my 3-year-old self when I was kidnapped and taken to Mexico. That actually did happen to me. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to hover over it, and I can see myself, my little 3-year-old self, getting on the phone, trying to figure out how to talk to my dad, how to call my dad. And I can drop down and I've already worked on this, right? So I can actually drop down in there. And so you'll drop down into the event if you can. If it's giving you anxiety and your body's starting to get tense, if you have a coach working with you, they can read your body language, they can see it. And so then you just back out. It's okay. You don't have to drop down into the event. Back out, look at it from far away, make the event as far as you need to so that you feel safe and comfortable, and start watching it. Watch it. What learnings are you getting? What can you get from the event that's going to change that narrative? What can you get? What was happening? You know what I'm saying? Oh, well, what really happened was that, XYZ happened. So like in my event, it really was a kidnapping. However, it was from my mother, and my mother was terrified in the situation she was in. So she grabbed me and left the country, right? And because she was trying to make me feel, because she was scared, I was feeling her. I was feeling my mother. And I didn't get to call my dad because of the situations, right? And I'm happy to share this just so people can get an idea, because that's a pretty what people will call traumatic event. So, but I was able to go back there and I was able to start seeing, and then I played with perceptual positions, like putting myself in my mother's position and really realizing what my mother was going through, and what I was feeling was a lot of that, right? And how my mom didn't know how to communicate with me to let me know, and I was too young to know. And what did I learn from that? What wisdom did I gain from that? What's the higher purpose for that? It has made me a very resilient woman. I am very resilient because of these different things that happen. And so now when I think of that, it doesn't scare me, and I don't feel angry at my mother, and I don't feel resentful. Now I feel empowered, Robyn. I feel empowered because I know that there was a higher purpose for me to get to sit here and teach someone that you've given me the opportunity to teach this and use that as an example. That was another higher purpose that this served, because now people listening can hear, like, wow, Dr. V's not just talking about how to heal trauma. That one story was whoa, and she was able to heal and again become empowered and gain wisdom from it. It no longer has a hold on her and is making her sick. And so once you gain the wisdom, then you float back up to your timeline. Your eyes are still closed. You look at the future and you start seeing every event between then and now, and how the quantum timeline, all the realities have changed. Everything's changed. Because remember, when you have a trauma like that happened, it starts to change everything in your life going forward, right? Because now the person may have felt unsafe. Like back then, I felt unsafe. I was moving around my whole life. I never made friends. Like all these things, all the issues I had with the relationship with my mama. You know what I'm saying? And as I turned around and started going back in my timeline towards the future, I could see everything changing. And so then I dropped back down into my body, into the present moment, right here, right now. And there's this release that happens that it's hard to even explain it, because I was able to go back and change the story. And it is possible. It's just not possible in the 3D, but it is possible in the quantum.
Wow. Beautiful story and an example. And it's interesting, as you were sharing your journey from the past into your amazing future and present, right? What you've created from that one event. I immediately, Elena, went to my 5-year-old self, where I was the second of 5 children, all under the age of 7. And the youngest was born with some health effects, and he was 6 months old. And I remember holding him like the day before he died. And it was, obviously a very traumatic time for our family. And I just feeling this precious life, right? Just then he died. And as time went on, I got to really go into feeling my mom and feeling my dad. And, here we are, a Catholic family, and we were literally living on welfare at the time. So anyway, but what the ripple of effect from that experience and the beauty of this blessing of, I feel like David is his name, is like an angel, right? That he's a big part of why, for 3 decades I've been so passionate about the work that is being done and all the healing and transformation that happens at Santa Fe Soul here in at my center. But it so much has happened as a result, so many blessings from a very traumatic experience early on in my life.
Yeah. And if we can change the narrative and we can change the story and get the wisdom and the learnings,
Yeah.
it can be used for for so many blessings for ourselves, for redemption and healing of ourselves, and for everyone around us too. We can then become a mentor and a guide for others.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking, as I'm tuning into everyone that's listening, it's probably gone on a journey like I did as you shared your story. There's a part very often that we still can't unleash from, right? There's still this part of us that goes into feeling like we deserved it, like to really, what's the word that I want to use, to uncord, like to go the distance, right? A lot of us have done a lot of healing, a tremendous amount of healing, but there's still something still in the roots of us that we can't let go. What would you say for that, to maybe a collective decording or whatever word we want to use to say, we're all in this together, right? This last 3 years has been really intense and transformative. And ultimately it's a beautiful wake up time that's happening for our global people and for Mother Earth to say yes, like everyone's life matters, that we can let go of that old programming to allow our hearts to lead our lives.
That's such a great question. I think that first of all, the individual has to decide if they want to continue suffering or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was a time when I also believed that I needed to sacrifice more, because I thought that was my way out of my crappy reality that I was living in, all the suffering, all the financial issues and the relationship issues and just all the stuff, right? I was exhausted. And I thought that my way to redemption was, that my way to being free of that was to suffer more. I thought I deserved it. I must have done something wrong. You know what I'm saying? And it the answer for me is, I think, the same answer for others. Are you ready to finish suffering? Are you ready to be done with the suffering? If you're really ready to be done for the suffering, if you're ready to see a different outcome, then, like, I love what you say, just say yes. And then start using the tools and modalities that you can use, because that's a really, really big thing. There are a lot of people who say that they want to heal, but they're not ready to stop suffering. They say that they want to feel better, but when you start unpacking, they're very, very, it's ingrained in them. I think it's happened for generations. It's a lot of programming that's happened where people really believe that they deserve to suffer. And it's just, I think us letting people know, like, you don't deserve to suffer. You have the choice. God gave you. We're not like the other animals that don't have a choice. We have a choice. And if you don't want to suffer anymore, if you don't want those same outcomes over and over again, and you want to jump off that hamster wheel of suffering, then just say yes. That's all you have to do. You don't have to suffer anymore. You are in control. You are driving the car. So you just have to make that choice to say yes. And once you say yes, then find some guides, find mentors, find therapists, find people who know how to use the modalities that actually work to teach you how you can now start pulling these thorns out, and you can be free from this once and for all. But you have to start by taking that first step and saying, yes, I'm finished suffering. I don't want to do this anymore.
Hmm. And allowing the land of permission, right? We've been there together. The land of
Yes.
permission. It's
Yes.
so fun. I mean, it's so fun when we drop the story, we drop the ego. I love that acronym. The ego's edging God out. We need it. It's the ego is the hands and feet of our soul. But just say yes. Just maybe we just everyone can say yes together right here, right now with Dr. Elena. That we're just purging the suffering and the energy that's
Yeah,
available to us is like so yummy,
it
right?
is. It
And to
is.
take that into our daily walk. Oh,
It
I
is.
love you so much, dear one, and
Uh,
just this amazing work that you're doing and sharing. And a lot of people want the quick fix, but you're talking a 6-month program. And I've seen, closely the lives that have been affected by your program. And for people that want to find out more, what's the best way to restore our bioenergetic frequencies with Dr. Elena?
you know what? You can go to our website, modernholistichealth.com. Just like with most websites, I need to make some overhauls and some changes. We're not, I don't have everything on there that I want. But if you go to modernholistichealth.com and you sign up for our emails, we have a beautiful trauma masterclass. It's a 5-part series, Robyn, and we take a deep dive into showing how the body and the brain and the neurology and the biology of the body changes to make us sick, and how we can use our understanding of quantum, our understanding of bioenergetics, and our understanding of these different tools and modalities to actually be able to bring the healing. And so, if they just connect with me, people. Just reach out and connect with us that way. We're happy to help you with that. And then I just want to end the 6-month program on one note. It doesn't take that long to bring the healing. The healing can actually happen like big, massive releases and shifts inside of the first 2 months. But the next 4 months is the integration. It's really dialing in on all of the new neurological shifts and the new neurological repatterning that we've done, because there's a lot of science to show that if you don't keep working on those new neurological connections, they'll shrink. Kind of like if you learn something in college, right? You learned something in math class or whatever, but then you graduate and you never use that because you're an English major, you never use it. You forget all those math formulas. Why do you forget them? Because you're not exercising those neurological pathways. So once you rebuild the neurological pathways, you can rebuild them very quickly, but then you have to start using them to make those highways get bigger and thicker and bigger and thicker. And that's what the 4 months is, after the initial deep work in the first 2 months.
That's so great because it's not just the destiny, right, that we're looking for, but it's all the richness and the transformation that's happening in this journey. Love it. Any last minute words of wisdom from you, Dr. Elena?
Yes. All of you listening, there is hope. You're not broken. There are answers and there are solutions. And have the appreciation for anyone that you've listened to on this beautiful summit who has resonated with you and made you feel any type of hope or warm fuzzies. Listen to that and then keep diving further. Keep taking steps. Don't stop after this. Keep going, because it's not an accident if you're here listening to this. Robyn and I can promise you 1,000%, if you're here listening to this, your soul was searching for this. Keep taking action. Take steps forward with the people that you resonate with, and keep on your journey. And then reach out to Robyn, reach out to me, and let us know how your journey is going, because we love you and we care about you. And we want to see you heal, and we want to see you totally healthy and totally whole.
Thank you so much, Elena, for bringing your hope, your heart, sharing what's possible for all of us to this journey of getting free of suffering and allowing joy. This, like, it is possible for each and every one of us. Thank you, all of you, for being here. This very illuminating, inspiring session with Dr. Elena Villanueva, and for you saying yes to yourself.
Thank you, Robyn.